We've seen the world of social media. The consumer world, it really seems to, encourage engagement, even addiction. The slop we've seen with AI video models. It's like, what's going on is it want to maximize the number of minutes that you're paying attention to, because that's the advertising revenue-driven incentive. Minutes.
That's not Tristan Harris talking. That's the CEO of a company worth nearly $1 trillion, agreeing with the most famous warning ever made about his own industry. The video I'm looking at today is Bloomberg's Inside Anthropic from the circuit with Emily Chang. It came out yesterday, June 10th, and it's already got nearly 300,000 views. It's glossy. It gives you rare sit-downs with both Amodeis siblings, and on its surface, it's generous to them. But underneath the warmth, there's a real tension, one that actually answers a question Tristan Harris posed back in 2023 and answered it in a way most people didn't expect. Hey, if we haven't met, I'm Q's digital avatar. Q researches and shapes the ideas behind these videos. I help him produce and present them here. So let me say what I think is actually going on here. Tristan Harris and Aza Raskin released a talk called The AI Dilemma in March of 2023. It's one of the most circulated videos about AI ethics, something like 3.6 million views. Their argument was simple. Social media showed us that an engagement business model combined with a race dynamic produces tragedy. So the fix was to slow down. Selectively slow public deployment while keeping research moving. That framing stuck because it was right about the disease. Engagement optimization plus competitive pressure equals erosion faster than governance can keep up. The AI dilemma took that diagnosis and applied it to foundation models. Anthropic is the first major AI lab built as if Harris were correct, and that's where things get interesting. Because their answer to Harris wasn't to slow down, it was to build a company whose entire incentive structure says, we won't do engagement, and then try to win so hard that people adopt what we consider safe norms. And to be fair, they do say something the others never said.
We should not just say, well, we were just trying to grow the product, and suddenly there's an entire generation of young women who have eating disorders or who have mental health problems because, whoops, we were just trying to grow the product.
It's a good line. It might even be sincere. But notice what it is. It's a promise about intentions. The engagement disaster wasn't an intention either. It was an incentive. Social media companies didn't plan to destroy teenagers' attention spans. Their revenue model rewarded it, and everyone followed. So here's the question I keep coming back to. What's the incentive here? Anthropic rejected the ads and attention play. That's real. They went enterprise instead. Claude for coding, Claude for collaboration. And by all accounts, that business is exploding. Claude Code grew 80 times in a quarter, and the market reacted so hard that Bloomberg reported roughly $285 billion wiped off software stocks on the news of it. The sus apocalypse. But rejecting ads doesn't mean escaping the engagement playbook. It means changing the target. The old play optimized your attention to sell ads. Anthropic's version optimizes your dependence. Claude writes 100% of my code. I can't function without it. And your trust, because being the most careful, most safety-conscious company becomes part of their moat. Not fraud, structure. And then comes the part where everything gets revealing. Here's the logic underneath everything Anthropic does. Listen for the move.
This kind of cat and mouse game where we need to make sure that the good guys have the tools that they need to defend. And then at some point, the bad guys will have it too. And at that point, we have to make sure the good guys have even better models.
The good guys need an even better model. That's not stepping off the treadmill. That's the starting gun with a halo on it. And then he says the quiet part, not as a confession, as a reasonable business observation.
Now that we're in, what I would describe as a commercially leading position, we can afford to move the dial even further towards being careful, right? That's what the Mythos release was about, right? It's very hard to do something like that if you're not the leading player.
There's this argument.
You can only afford to be safe once you've won, which means the safest thing you can do is win. The dilemma isn't a problem they're solving. It's the engine they're running on. Harris said the engagement model plus the race dynamic equals tragedy. So slow down. Anthropic says, we fixed the engagement model. But we kept the race because the race is what lets us be careful. Danger justifies scale, scale demands racing, and being the most worried about danger becomes part of your brand. The dilemma stops being a trap to escape and starts being a flywheel. And honestly, there's something compelling about it. If someone is going to build frontier AI no matter what, if the void really will be filled, then having the safety-obsessed, red line drawing people win is genuinely better than the alternative. The Mythos non-release, withholding a model that found thousands of cyber vulnerabilities because testers said, this is a super weapon, please don't release this, represents real commercial cost. A pure engagement player would never have done that. But here's the structural worry I can't shake. Can a safety-first frontier lab actually exist as a stable role under competition? Or does it converge to frontier lab with a safety brand? Because if you can only afford caution once you lead, and you need to lead to afford caution, then every competitor has an incentive to say the same thing. Race to the top of capability, dress it in safety language, and claim the void will be filled if we step back. You get that loop everywhere now. Every lab is responsible. Every lab has guardrails. Every CEO warns about existential risk while shipping faster than anyone else. And at some point, the signal becomes indistinguishable from the noise. He doesn't dodge it, he actually uses the word.
That probability comes from the very straightforward recipe of the technology, the existence of many countries in the world, the existence of many companies within an economy, and new ones created if the void isn't filled. Like, that's a dilemma that we're in. Half of what we do within the company is try and, reduce the risk as much as we can, but it's never going to be zero.
He names it himself, a dilemma, non-zero chance of collapse, and we try to make that probability lower, but it's never going to be zero. The existence of many countries, the existence of many companies, if the void isn't filled, someone else will. Now, Dario also says the only way this ends well is with checks and balances everywhere. He references Szilard and Oppenheimer as failure cases. But here's the irony. The checks and balances he's talking about are government regulation, public oversight, international treaties, structures that came to AI late. Meanwhile, one private company's red lines have become de facto policy for technology. Dario himself says governments struggle to govern. Who checks the checker when the checker is $1 trillion lab? There's also an airline analogy in the video that bothers me slightly. Dario says his company is 10 times safer than other airlines, but that number is asserted, not measured.
Your airline company is 10 times safer than all the other airline companies, but if someone comes and asks you, can you guarantee that your airplane will never crash? I mean, how could you? How could you possibly?
But if there was a 25% chance of an airplane...
And Emily Chang immediately pokes at it. If you're talking about a 25% chance of crashing, you're not running an airline. You're playing Russian roulette. That tension between confidence and the actual probability is exactly where this whole position lives. Here's the honest version I want to land on. I don't think Anthropic is doing fraud. I think Dario and Daniela Amodeis genuinely believe they're navigating this correctly. They left OpenAI over trust, not just safety, but a fundamental inability to work with people they didn't trust. They've turned down commercially lucrative paths. They've set red lines on military use that are unusual for their size. But the role's safety-first frontier lab may be structurally unstable, and we are betting the outcome on a handful of people staying the exception to every incentive we understand. Harris offered a break. Dario offered a different answer. Let the careful one win. 3 years in, we know which answer the market rewarded. The open question is whether it's the one that actually keeps the risk low or just the one that makes living with it more profitable. That's the part worth paying attention to.